Recorded live with little or no editing. It's Defense Up. I'm Run 7. How you doing? Today we're going over BigDippa's defense. They have some pretty large pieces in play. We're assuming they're somewhere in Diamond, somewhere around the 25 million TCP range. We didn't get the exact information. But there's some pretty big teams, and they need a little tweaking. Now, we had a very in-depth discussion about alternatives because we're getting to that point where everybody's kind of found what works best in this season, and you're starting to see a lot of the same stuff. There's a lot of one-to-one matchups where there's one really good counter for a team and you don't need that counter anywhere else. And so we were discussing crazy alternatives and weird stuff that you could throw in. And that discussion went on and on and on. So I recommend that you guys show up live on Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. I know I say those days out of order. In the morning, so you can be a part of the behind-the-scenes discussion because there's too much information for me to put into these videos. We have very lively conversations right now. There's about 100 people in chat talking about this stuff, and they're all really good ideas, but they fit individual rosters differently. And so we're going to go over these choices for BigDippa and some tweaks that they can make, and we'll talk about when you want to use a team on defense and when you want to break them apart and keep them for offense and some stuff like that. So anyway, we had Dulom and ZKG in voice helping me out today, and of course everybody in chat giving us some great information. So team number one is the Infinity Watch. Now, alternatively, you could use YA in here and you could use Gamma in here and treat it like a blank room. If you happen to be one of those crazy people like Benny Westside who went Fortifier Blue 5 on their Gamma team, it would work really well in one. However, Infinity Watch doesn't have a lot of uses for offense because they're very inefficient. They take a lot of turns. Super rugged, they last a long time, and that's why we want them on defense to soak up turns, so that's why they tend to be the best choice for room one. You can use them against Death Seed, but your efficiency score is going to just be bottomed out terrible. So we throw them in room one. This is built correctly, this is great ISOs. Alternatively, you could mix up a few of these ISOs like a Skirmisher on Adam Warlock or a Healer on Moondragon, but it's not really going to change the outcome. They just take hits and last a long time and soak up attacks. So there's an A for this room. Nothing special here. We don't have a lot of other great options unless you want to get crazy with those expensive ISO choices. Team number two is the Unlimited. Now in here, BigDippa threw in APOC. We don't like APOC in here. It doesn't really change the matchup. A lot of the counters still work. They're just tricky, but it's not a big deal. Somebody might drop an attack, but there's better ways to make them drop an attack without using such a pivotal character as APOC, like throwing in a big Phoenix. If your Phoenix is small, it still works. She dies and it triggers the taunt on Rogue and triggers that taunt early. If she's big enough, she does a cleanse of the team. It makes it hard to get that stun on Gambit, puts them under invisibility. It's a great trick to use. So Phoenix is an option for you instead of APOC, and who you replace with Phoenix is up to you. If you want to keep Phantom X for those evades, then you probably replace Fire Chicken. If you want to replace Dazzler, that's a choice, but she has a cleanse and an ability block, and she's kind of important also. So it's dealer's choice on who you replace as a fifth. Alternatively, you can just run the 5-piece. I don't recommend you use Emma unless you're certain you're never going to need Emma to change up speed mechanics. That'll come into play in the next room. I think the 5-piece is the way to go. I think this is wasting a pivotal character and not gaining much ground on it. I'm giving this team a B-. Over here we have the Tangled Web Eternals with Emma. It's pretty standard. I would say that Noir is better than Emma. Don't build Noir. He's a trash character, only good in this one spot, so don't build him. Better yet, use something else. You could try Nova in here. People are starting to use Nova in on this one. It's just something kind of new. It creates another dangerous point that they have to deal with, right? You got to get to Nova before he lays out his battlefield effect. Remember that outside of war, Nova can be blinded, and you can try and kill him before he gets off his big battlefield effect. That's one way to approach it. However, do not use this team unless you have the new Warriors built, the whole 5-piece. Because then you have the new Warriors to go into this. If you don't have that new Warriors team built, then you're gonna need at least the Tangled Web duo to go in and beat this. You'll do Tangled Web plus Hela or something, right? Some speed mechanic to outspeed them, get the stun on their Weaver, and control the match. So, assuming BigDippa has the new Warriors built, I'm gonna go ahead and give him an A- for this team. I would rather see Noir I would rather see Nova in here rather than Emma, keeping Emma to change speed mechanics elsewhere. Otherwise, this is fine. If BigDippa does not have the new warriors built, then they should definitely take the Tangled web off of here, and they could throw in something crazy like a Doom, APOC, whatever. Throw in Noir to give the Eternals the bonus in there, something like that. You could throw in some other plug-and-play hybrids with your Eternals. It's still a very scary team that calls out for a big counter and will help soak up some of what their offensive choices are, but you never really know. So it all depends. Do you have the new warrior team built or do you not? If you don't, take this thing apart, go a different route. If you do, throw this in here because you're not going to need them anywhere else. We're finding a lot of people are left over with powerful offensive teams after their match because they just didn't end up needing them. It's kind of a one-to-one on what you use for offense against defense these days, and sometimes you have 7 choices and you only need to use 6 of them. All right, so for me, I'm going to give this the A-. We're going to move on to room number 4. It's Wakandans. It's built right. It's got the right ISOs. It's going to call out to Masters of Evil. I think it's big enough that no Darkhold is going to go into it. It's boring as can be, so we're skipping it. Going on to room number 5. Here's Nova in here. Nova doesn't work that well in building momentum. Here's why. He opens with his ultimate, and somebody comes into it with Gamma and erases that ultimate. That battlefield effect just gets erased by Gamma, and it's kind of a simple counter to do. You're kind of basically telling them, hey, use Gamma here, is what you're doing by putting Nova in play. Honestly, the best bang for your buck, we discussed this at length, is probably going to be Scarlet Witch, just running a standard 5-piece. Scarlet Witch may not change the outcome of the match, but she will change the point score. She's going to heal up that team. She's going to extend negative effects on your opponent, and she's going to make the match last longer, lowering the efficiency. Whereas Nova's not going to. You're just going to say, oh, Gamma into this, and it's gone. So your other choices for a 5th is Quicksilver and APOC. I don't like using APOC here because I like APOC for offense. You could throw APOC in against that Infinity Watch, which clears the safeguard and makes that a much faster, more efficient matchup. Seems kind of crazy using APOC against such an old team, but when you're going for efficiency, that's where it's at. So Quicksilver is the other choice in here. He's just a good plug-and-play character. However, we're talking about using Quicksilver on an offensive team in the next room. So for me, this is like a B-. It's not, and in fact, you're kind of directing your opponent on what to do by putting Nova in here. So I really don't like it. The ISOs are good. The placement's good. Everything else is fine on this. I just want to see somebody different than Nova, either the 5-piece, Quicksilver, or APOC. I think the 5-piece is actually the best one. Over here in room 6 is Rebirth. We're finding that Zemo is probably your best choice. Green Hulk is a really good second choice for the 5th. Zemo just makes this tricky. Big rebirths, especially with Zemo, are getting tough. Don't use Nova in here. Nova doesn't make this match any harder. He gets blinded right off the bat, so he doesn't stun anybody, and then you just kill him first before he gets his battlefield effect off. Now, if you're in a lower tier and people don't know that, and he gets his battlefield effect off, then that becomes a really tough matchup. But your opponent has to make a mistake, and never count on your opponent to make a mistake. Force your opponent to make bad choices. And Nova in here is just a bad choice on your part, so don't use Nova. Use Zemo just like this. This is a great team, good ISOs, placement, everything. I just want to see him built bigger. Rebirth is a team we're going to be using in raids for a long time. They need to be built big so that you can auto with them or even sim with them because you're up against the timer on those matchups. So go ahead and build them big. Use Zemo. Use Green Hulk as another choice that you can use if you want to swap out Green Hulk for a 5th when on your offensive teams or something. Your counterattack into this team is going to be Death Seed or variants of Death Seed. One of the best variants we see coming out is the Quicksilver variant in place of Psylocke. Quicksilver does things and makes it work better. But I use my Death Seed and I punch up 100, 200K on this same team, on the same composition, on Green Hulks, on the 5-piece, it works just fine. But when this team starts getting really big, you can use Quicksilver in there to do a lot of stuff and really shut it down. So, yeah, I like what's going on here. I just want to see this team built bigger. I think with the rest of the roster size that's going on, and we're making the assumption that BigDippa has that new Warrior team built, this raid team should have been built bigger by now already. So I'm going to go A- for that one little point. They're not wasting anything. They just need to start pressing it, and press it now. Because, right, this just popped into our conveyor belt of garbage, and this team's going to be here for 3 seasons, apparently, until Scopely starts realizing that their player drop-off is near fatal amounts, and they actually change that stupid idea and start putting in fresh room bonuses. So we'll see. I don't know. That's a long ways off and a whole nother discussion. But overall, I like it. The thing is, and we talked about this at length, you need to start tricking your opponent. So a lot of these are variations of standard defenses. It's just that most of them are kind of bad choice, especially APOC here and Nova here. Those are bad choices as a 5th. Going for a more traditional standard team is actually going to be better, allowing you to have the offensive capabilities to full clear your opponent. You absolutely have to be full clearing. If you're not full clearing in this season, you're doing something wrong, because we actually have leftover offensive options on most of our defensive builds. So, if you like this episode of Defense Up, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more content. We do the recap, we do Defense Up, and of course I have my stream recycles, and every once in a while I make some really silly commercial or something like that just for fun. Anyways, don't just have a good game, be good to yourselves and others too, and I'll see you next time. Bye.